You see, the English language is a fascinating labyrinth filled with modal verbs. These little words are often misunderstood, and today we're debunking those misconceptions. Modal verbs aren't just about grammar rules, they are the secret sauce that adds flavor to our conversations. They help us express politeness, possibility, obligation, and speculation. Imagine asking someone for a favor. Saying, "Can you pass the salt?" is quite different from "Could you pass the salt?" The latter sounds more polite, doesn't it? Similarly, may is not just about permission, it's also about possibility. And must goes beyond mere obligation. It's a nuanced labyrinth, but don't worry, we're here to navigate it together. So now that we've cleared the air about some misconceptions, let's jump into the fascinating world of modal verbs. Let's start with the superhero of modal verbs, can, a word of possibility and ability. Think of can as the Swiss Army knife of the English language, always ready to lend a hand. It's a versatile little word, used to express what someone is capable of doing or to indicate that something is possible. For instance, you might say, "I can play the guitar." Here, can is showing your ability to strum a tune, or perhaps, "It can rain today." In this case, can suggests a possibility, a chance of rain. But remember, can isn't just about skills and possibilities, it's also about permission. Can I go to the party? Here, you're not questioning your physical ability to attend a party, but rather seeking permission to do so. So, can is your go-to modal verb when you want to talk about abilities or possibilities. Now, meet could, the polite cousin of can. The English language is full of quirks and nuances, and our friend could is no exception. Could is often used to make polite requests. Imagine you're at a fancy dinner and you want to ask for the salt. You wouldn't say, "Can you pass the salt?" That might come off as too direct. Instead you'd say, "Could you pass the salt?" See how that just sounds more polite? Now let's talk about another use of could. It's also used to talk about possibilities in the past. Let's say you're reminiscing about your school days. You might say, "I could run a mile in 6 minutes back then." This means that running a mile in 6 minutes was a possibility for you in the past. So whether you're making a polite request or talking about past possibilities, could is your go-to modal verb. Remember, could is your best friend when you want to sound polite or talk about something that was possible in the past. Next up is will, the fortune teller of modal verbs. Now will is a bit of a clairvoyant among the modal verbs. It's often used when we're talking about future events or making promises. For instance, if you're predicting tomorrow's weather, you might say, "It will rain tomorrow." You're making an educated guess about the future. But will isn't just about predicting. Oh no, it's also a promise maker. If you've ever said, "I will call you later," you're not just predicting that you're going to make a call, you're promising it. It's a subtle but important distinction. And don't forget, will can also express willingness or an intention. For example, "I'll hold the door for you," is a kind offer, not a prediction. So, whether you're predicting the weather, making a promise, or expressing an intention, will is your go-to modal verb. So, when you want to talk about the future or make a promise, will is your trusty companion. Let's move on to would, the hypothetical speaker. This modal verb is a chameleon, changing its form to fit the scenario. It's a master of hypotheticals, often used in conditional sentences. For example, if I were a billionaire, I would buy a private island. Here, would is used to indicate a possible action in a hypothetical situation. Would also plays a role in polite requests. It softens the tone of a sentence, making it seem less direct and more courteous. For instance, "Would you pass the salt?" is gentler and more polite than "pass the salt." Let's not forget about would in reported speech. When relaying past conversations, would often steps in to replace will. For instance, "He said he would call me back." So, would is your ally when you want to express hypothetical situations or make polite requests. It's like the English language's version of a diplomatic envoy, always striving to keep things cordial and hypothetical. Now, let's talk about may, the permission giver. The modal verb may is a handy tool in English, and it shines in two main roles. First, it's a polite way to ask or give permission. For instance, if you're at a dinner party and want to start eating, you might ask, "May I begin?" It's a sophisticated way to request permission, making you sound like you've just stepped out of a classic English novel. The second role of may is expressing possibility. It's like peering into a crystal ball, but with less hocus pocus. For example, you could say, "It may rain tomorrow," suggesting there's a chance of rain, but it's not guaranteed. It's a less definitive prediction than using will. Remember, when you use may, you're either asking for the green light or predicting the future. It's a magical word, isn't it? So use may to ask or give permission and to talk about things that might happen. Lastly, let's discuss must, the obligation expressor. This little word packs a powerful punch, expressing obligation, necessity, or a strong recommendation. Consider this scenario. You're giving advice to a friend who's visiting your city for the first time. You might say, "You must visit the park downtown, it's a local favorite." Here, must is used to give a strong recommendation. But must isn't limited to just advice. It also lays down the law, so to speak. For instance, if you're a teacher setting classroom rules, you could say, "You must turn in your homework on time." Here, must expresses an obligation or a requirement. And let's not forget the more formal settings. All passengers must present their boarding passes. This is a clear necessity, and there's no wiggle room for interpretation. So, must is the modal verb you need when you want to express something that is necessary or strongly recommended. Now that we've covered all the common modal verbs, each one has its unique use and context. Understanding and using them correctly can help you express yourself more accurately and effectively in English. Remember, using the right modal verb can dramatically change the meaning of your sentence. So keep practicing and you'll master them in no time.
Si quieres más información sobre clases de inglés adaptadas a tus necesidades, o si quieres mejorar tus habilidades en el idioma, deja la palabra info en los comentarios. Me contactaré contigo en la brevedad posible.